I almost have no words to start this off here. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, ThrashMetalGuru here, back again. If you guys saw the live stream I did over Morgue Official, it was actually about a very controversial subject over the state of Texas and pretty much the Middle Eastern regarding the ideas of the abortion law, regarding religion and the political beliefs that pretty much intertwine, I guess, in that sense. However, though, in that stream, it was more of a political issue and not really much of a religious issue, because the only thing that I got out of that stream was the fact that he pointed out a personal story that he had of a religious sense in terms of abortion as justification for the state of Texas imposing an abortion law. Anyway, as opposed to that stream, this is a video that actually came to my mind. Now, I want to make this on record and very clear. I'm going to say this because I want to address this very clear, because I know there's a lot of people that have come over and flocked over to my video before, and they bash me, for being a Christian. That's fine. The thing about it is that I'm not one of those Christians who judges people, whether if you believe in Lucifer, if you believe in Buddha, if you believe in Shiva, if you believe in a pantheonic religion, or if you believe in a monotheistic religion, a theist, if you're agnostic atheist, if you're pretty much believing, hell, even if you believe in the flying spaghetti monster. I'm not one of those kind of people that judge, but when you kind of use messages like this in particular sense and not being able to actually factualize the actual evidence that there is, then yes, it becomes a very big problem. I'm not the only one who's criticized more for. I can't even stress this enough, because people like Count Jackula, StevieWolfe, and other people. And again, you're also looking in terms of people that are, from the term of Satanist or atheist, or even Christians themselves. All three of those, pretty much in that dynamic, have pretty much called out cult-like behavior like this before. Now, the title of this video is called Jesus Christ is Lucifer, which pretty much is a complete contradiction in itself in the terms of the Christian aspect of morality and the Christian aspect. And it actually doesn't even just go for Christianity. It even goes into that interpretation of many ways, even in Catholicism, Christianity itself, Methodism, Baptism, Evangelicalists, Methodists, and whatever denomination of Christianity that you can go with. Now, again, I'm not trying to tell people that you're wrong about believing something different, because that's not what this is about. However, though, in Hyperianism, this is one thing I have a huge issue with, because it just seems to kind of go after people. Now, before I kind of get into criticizing this, I do want to make at least one more thing clear about this, is that the thing about it is that I'm a non-religious Christian. As I believe in God, I do read the Bible, and I pretty much believe that Jesus is a personal savior. However, though, I actually, on the record, I completely respect and value those who believe differently. Even if you believe something that's completely different from mine, that's not for me to judge. I believe in loving people, and I believe in accepting people for who they are. It doesn't matter, again, whether if you believe something differently in the religious aspect, or if you disbelieve, if you're gay, bisexual, lesbian, whether if you happen to be different in a sense, it's not for me to judge. But when you see things like this, or when I see things like this is where I actually get to call it out. And again, kind of referring back to the point of people flocking over to my videos, it's like, oh, because you're a Christian, you don't understand anything about Hyperianism. Sorry, I don't need to be a Christian to pretty much criticize Hyperianism. All I have to do is just take a look at something in that flawed sense, not only as a Christian, but again, even Satanist, atheists, even a good portion of agnostic people, which the largest portion of my audience, by the way, happens to be atheist. In that sense, some of them Christian, yes, some of them are Satanist as well too, but a good portion of my audience is in fact atheists. If you don't believe me, you can even ask some of my my followers as well too. They'll actually back that up. If you want to ask some people that I know in certain communities that I know, they actually most likely are in atheism or agnosticism. or some of them that happen to be in the other, whether in pantheism and such. But anyway, we're going to get into this right now because I wanted to state that on record. But so this is about 21 minutes, so I'm going to kind of get into the record. I'm going to be mature about this as possible, and hopefully I don't kind of spurg off and cursing and such, because I do know that there's probably going to be something that's going to set me off. So that being said, let's get into it.
Christ and Lucifer. The church wants you to believe that they're enemies, but what if they were actually the same? Not only does the Bible itself contain strong evidence towards this, but the evidence...
Okay, hold on. How does the Bible show evidence of a contradiction of a notion which pretty much stated out in certain events when Jesus Christ himself versus the devil, like in the battle of the desert, when the devil had tempted Jesus in certain like quote unquote promises from that person, and Jesus had refused because in one aspect Jesus actually said to Satan that men should not live on bread and water alone. Certain areas like that, it doesn't make any sense that you would point out already without using actual clear context from the events of that. As we obviously know in the history, Satan or Lucifer was pretty much God's most beautiful angel ever. And in the sense, you also have to remember that being born pretty much in that a sense of heaven, as opposed to Jesus, who was pretty much made, and again, we're talking about the context from the Bible here, was made from God and also pretty much born from the human of the Virgin Mary. So it doesn't make sense that when one person, or pretty much when two separate, you could say deities at that point, one born in heaven, the other one born pretty much on earth among mankind, it doesn't make sense. Now you could say that in a possible aspect that maybe they're related. You could say that. I mean, obviously born from God, so you could see a strong relation. I mean, if you really think about it, Saint Michael being one of the highest angels as well, too, pretty much in regards of Lucifer being also technically one of the highest parts of angels. So you could go with that, but how do you compare two people, one force of evil, one force of good, is the exact same? It doesn't make sense. And it would completely destroy the entire context of the Bible itself. And not to mention, again, we're talking about stories that are written over thousands of years, so you can't really make the connection without furthering evidence along. It doesn't make any sense.
Also exists in many secret gospels and Christian books that were banned and destroyed by the church. Now, why did the church destroy these so-called blasphemous and heretical books? Because of what they revealed. Many of them claimed to contain the secret truth.
Claimed doesn't mean it's absolutely true. Someone can actually just write some arbitrary crap, and then all of a sudden people believe it, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, this is actually shocking. Burn it. Nobody really knows for an actual fact. That's like saying that, like, oh, I could just write in certain things in certain mythology, saying something in Norse or something in Greek would happen, and then all of a sudden people would buy it up. No, it doesn't really make any sense there. I could throw the same thing in using made up crap and then throwing it into Hyperianism, and then people take it at face value. Nobody absolutely knows for an absolute truth. And the thing about it is, faith, as much as it really kind of, it doesn't really kind of stack well against evidence and fact. However, though, faith pretty much is usually that primary method as opposed to it, because, you never know. There's tests. There's also pretty much the sense of trusting something else when something else seems like it may be true. It could be something else. Nobody really knows. So you can't really base upon that. And do we know exactly where this evidence came from? Do we actually know?
Jesus, the self-proclaimed light of the world and morning star, be the same being as Lucifer, whose name in Latin literally means Lightbringer and morning star? And could they have the same mission, to set humanity free and ultimately overthrow God?
Okay, but the problem is that Jesus in the Bible is pretty much God himself in human form, pretty much, even though he's the Son of God, but pretty much in the sense of, in the position, using the power of God. So to ultimately say that the difference between that is that Lucifer would pretty much use a rebellion against God when Jesus himself tried to save humanity from destroying itself. When Lucifer was actually cast out of heaven, pretty much he ruled the kingdom of hell, and now pretty much using his own kingdom to ensnare souls to the damned. So to say that Jesus Christ himself is supposed to be the same exact as Lucifer Morningstar to quote unquote set humanity free, the concept of that does not pretty much entwine together because it's two opposing forces. So that's like saying, and I know this is kind of a weird way of saying this, that's kind of like saying that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader from Star Wars are the exact same beings, which no, it's not, because in the context, when Darth Vader pretty much murdered and betrayed his father, or not, I'm sorry, when Darth Vader murdered and betrayed Anakin, I'm sorry, I don't know where father came from, I think I'm using the kind of the God area in this, but when Darth Vader pretty much betrayed, Anakin Skywalker, pretty much it was a side that pretty much corrupted the other area over, so you can't really make the assumption that they're two exact same beings. Jesus and Lucifer are not the exact same being. It doesn't make sense that one person be evil, the other be good, and then actually have the exact same thing go on for humanity, because evil itself doesn't take pleasure or pretty much the time or the content, and we're talking Lucifer here, by the way, wouldn't take the absolute value to what Jesus said because he's an opposing force. You can't have your cake and eat it too on that part because it doesn't make any sense to rally that part. It's just like saying that, again, Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars and Darth Vader are pretty much sharing the exact same mission to liberate, the world of quote-unquote oppressive freedoms. So it's pretty much just using a textbook area here like Star Wars. And if you don't get what I mean, watch episode 3 and then watch episode 4. You'll see exactly where I'm going. Obi-Wan Kenobi makes like the perfect assumption to that, which would pretty much use the same exact logic against pretty much what he's claiming here. But only except Obi-Wan Kenobi actually knows what the hell he's talking about, even if it's cryptic.
My name is Mourge, and I'm all about bringing the light of knowledge to the world. In my
Okay, but do you still charge people for the so-called knowledge that you obviously know, because you also claim to be the guy who knows that what lies on the other side of the universe, that the human conscious is pretty much linked to another parallel dimension that lays on the walls beyond the cosmos? How would you know this? Have you been to the other side, Xenu? And yes, I'm using a StevieWolfe reference here because he pretty much refers to him as Xenu, or John 5.
It's extremely controversial, and because of that, the success of this channel and movement is all because of you. So if you haven't already, subscribe. Do it right now. And hit the like button, because when you do that, it tells the algorithm to spread this message like fire. So do it.
No, I get to criticize it. That's just me. I mean, you have every right to criticize my beliefs and all that, and that's fine. And you know what? I'm still willing to at least listen. But I do have the right to criticize this. So, again, I'm not going to go over and tell people who believe in Buddhism, Satanism, or Taoism, Hinduism, pantheism, or anyone like them. I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong, because, the thing about it is that with all of these, they make about 1 million times more sense than an actual cult like this. All that makes a lot more sense than this, because at least that there's good history, and there's at least a history in a better context of understanding in those terms of religion. I'm not even a person who actually likes religion, and it's a contradiction of itself to make that, but at least those hold together with a lot more sense than what's going on here.
Now, I myself used to be a Christian when I was very young, and I was raised in a strict Christian household. And I remember.
And I'm very sorry that those people were actually bad to you that way. If they were so strict and they used such guilt-tripping methods or anything that would make you feel bad, or whether if you were. I'm not making this claim here. I'm only guessing here. I'm going out on a whim, possibly either verbally, physically abused, or anything like that because of said set of beliefs, then you have my sympathies on that. But you have your own personal issues with that, and I wish you the very best on dealing with that. But with the exception of the highly religious zealots that I do believe that you should go after, like the highly zealous Christian zealots that I'm referring to. I believe, you know what, you got every right to go after those people. I say go after those people, but like you make it like a goal to kind of just destroy people's foundation of beliefs, and I really think that that's not really the right way to go about it. I mean, if you hate religion, okay, cool. You know what? That's your prerogative. That's your thing. I got no problem with that. But you know, if you're trying to set out to destroy something, you know, expect opposition. So, and you know, I'm trying to be very logical and reasonable with this until something pretty much pops up and it kind of sets off.
For being taught that Lucifer was absolutely evil. And most people imagine Lucifer as a dark, evil, satanic being with horns. But did you know the Bible actually describes Lucifer as having originated in heaven as a powerful angel of light?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much, you know, everything has an origin. Everything has pretty much an origin that pretty much, you know, that starts to correlate and that starts to expand. Kind of like that whole Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader kind of parallel that I've been making.
Ezekiel, Lucifer is described as powerful, beautiful, and wise.
We know
then,
this.
according to the Bible, Lucifer became corrupt, and they led a revolution in heaven against God. But why? Why did Lucifer revolt against God? Understanding Lucifer's motivation for starting the war in heaven is key to understanding how Lucifer and Jesus are the same.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're telling me because when Lucifer led a revolt against heaven, this automatically compares how Jesus becomes the exact same as Lucifer, despite the fact that a war in the heaven was caused by Lucifer, an angel, as opposed to Jesus, again, born, you know, unto man from the Virgin Mary. You're also talking about a person, again, born pretty much in human form as the Son of God, who pretty much teaches the gospel of God, who teaches the teachings of God to tell people to be merciful, to be a lot more humble in life, or to tell people, you know, not to live under fear from pretty much the authority of, you know, Rome, for example, and also to let people know that there is always salvation, that there is always hope. And you're telling me that those two are the same because one leads a revolution against God because one tries to claim the throne as opposed to one who is more humble in life and accepting of people? That doesn't make sense. Two opposing forces together, that's like saying you're trying to fuse people together and then it causes the exact same. It doesn't work that way. Those are two opposing forces and you can't really compare apples to oranges. You can't do that. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it would also, it takes absolutely no brains at all to figure that it would completely disembobulate, and I'm so sorry that the camera just fell because I'm being a dumbass here. It pretty much kills the entire point of salvation. It kills the entire point of being a reborn Christian. It completely kills the entire point of salvation through the message. Because you're comparing a rebellious angel to the Spirit, or pretty much the Son of God, pretty much the embodiment of God in human form, as opposed to a rebellious angel. Again, angel, Son of God. You know, physically.
Before we unravel the mystery of this war in heaven, let's take a closer look at the connection between Jesus, Lucifer, and light. Because this connection to light is critical. Jesus himself claims to be the light of the world twice. Once in John 8:12, where he directly says, I am the light of the world. And again in John 9:5, when he says, when I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And in Revelation 22:16, Jesus identifies himself as the morning star. I, Jesus, am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Jesus is self-described as a bringer of light to the world and the morning star. And as I said earlier, Lucifer is a Latin name that means Lightbringer and morning star. And in Isaiah 14:12, a verse that many Bible scholars...
You ever hear about replacements? So, again, let's also kind of back up, because the war in the heaven was obviously way before the birth and creation of Jesus. So obviously, and we're also talking about way before the start of Genesis, by the way. So that kind of puts two flaws into this entire argument here, because just because Jesus himself saying he's also the light of the world and also the morning star, that could also be referring to the fact that he is the new light and the new morning star, as opposed to Lucifer, who was originally the morning star and the light bringer, which he no longer is, because now he's pretty much the Lord of the damned. He's pretty much the Lord of the underworld now, the bringer of hell, pretty much the demon of hell, or the king of hell, as you may see. He's no longer holding that reputation as that person anymore. He no longer has pretty much that status quo of the light bringer, or pretty much, the morning star. He no longer has that. Because he lost it, because he led a rebellion, and therefore he was dropped out of heaven, and there you go. Now, saying that just because Jesus says, now I am the light of the world, and he's the follower, like pretty much unto David, he's the morning star, that doesn't mean he's the exact same person. That's like saying that a previous associate of mine who used to work where I work used to be the manager. He no longer is the manager because he gets fired. I happen to work in that place and I'm suddenly the manager now. I am now the manager. I am the manager of that store. That doesn't mean that the person before me, who's that manager, and I are the exact same person. He was a manager and I am a manager, and I'm only hypothetically saying this. I'm only using a hypothetical scenario, by the way. I'm not using an actual real life scenario. That person who was a manager was a manager. If I happen to be in that same position as that person who is a manager, then I am the manager, but I'm not the exact same person. You kind of catch my drift here? Okay, so it wouldn't make sense for me for someone who believes in Jesus would also be someone who believes in Satan, because again, it goes against the notion that evil itself actually has no purpose then. Good and evil have purposes together. It's to balance the scales. So to say that Jesus himself is the exact same as Lucifer would make no sense at all, because it kind of takes out the status of evil. That's like saying that consequence now actually has no meaning on earth, because the actions and consequences don't really matter if Jesus and Lucifer are the exact same people. That's also kind of saying that, oh yeah, well, setting the world free, well, technically rapists, murderers, and all that can pretty much just do whatever the hell they want then, because there would be no evil, there would be no consequence. There's a little bit more detail I can add on that, but we got to move forward on this.
Believe describes Lucifer, identifies him as the morning star. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. Now it's...
Again, but here's another thing that kind of throws the flaw into there. Lucifer himself was cast down out of heaven. He was banished from heaven. Now, to put it back into the quotations that God himself, and again, John 3:16, which pretty much would contradict the entire flaw and argument of this, because he messed this one up. John 3:16, so for God who loved the world so much, he sent his only begotten Son, not to condemn the world, but to save it. God sent his Son to save the world, as opposed to God banishing Lucifer to hell. Do you see the big flaw in that entire thing? Do you see that? So I refuse to believe that these manuscripts that someone else written, and you gotta also remember that this is also man-made, written too sometimes. So again, I'm also under that theory that some things can be changed and some things can be in fact flawed, but we don't know for an absolute fact, because the stories and pretty much the documents that are made are in fact man-made. However, though, I will say that there are historical documents that at least prove that some of these events in the Bible actually took place. Some of you don't believe me, that's fine. I'm not going to try to pitch that to you. I'm just telling you exactly from what I've observed and also have pretty much used in my observation and also doing research and such in my personal perspective. Okay, I'm not here to convince you. I'm just criticizing this. I'm not here to pretty much win anybody over, but I actually have pretty much my own view that I wanted to show on this. And how fitting this would be on September 11th, by the way.
Clear that both Christ and Lucifer are light bringers and are identified as the morning star.
Again, the whole manager theory I can use. I would be a manager. The other guy before me was a manager, but that doesn't mean we're the exact same people. Again, the different context between someone who was banished to hell and then someone else who was brought into the womb of Mary to be born and to save the world. Again, contradicts itself way too many times. I don't even actually need to use this argument anymore.
But a closer look at Isaiah 14:12 reveals more critical information. Notice that Lucifer is also identified as the son of the dawn, originated in heaven, and was then cast to earth. Both Christ and Lucifer are described as powerful beings related to light that originated in heaven before arriving to earth. And in mainstream Christianity, Jesus is portrayed as the Son of God, sent from heaven to earth to save humanity, while Lucifer is portrayed as the son of the dawn, having fallen to earth from heaven after starting a revolution in heaven and attempting to overthrow God. But could these two stories actually be intertwined? Could they be the same? What exactly is Jesus trying to save humanity from? To understand the connection,
To save us from our own ignorance, because we're still pretty much stupid assholes. And yes, I'm going to use that word, by the way, because we still have not yet to learn, and that's pretty much the reason why. For someone who's been filled more with compassion as opposed to a fallen angel that pretty much now rules over by using deceit, manipulation, lies, and pretty much fear tactics, for damned souls, as opposed to people under the midst of salvation. So, again, continuing on, because I'm not buying this.
we have to look deeper at Lucifer's attempt to overthrow God. According to the Bible, specifically Ezekiel, Lucifer wanted to become God. When the revolution against God failed and Lucifer was cast to earth.
Okay, but see, now this becomes, again, this is where it becomes to inverse itself. Lucifer wanted to become God. Jesus was the Son of God, who pretty much also embodied the power of God. So you're talking about one wanting to become God when one was pretty much, and the other, by the way, who was already pretty much in the form, in the presence of God. So you cast one area out, you're left with another. So it puts a flaw in there.
Something seemingly strange happened. Lucifer began to tell humanity that they could become God. And this happens in the Garden of Eden. According to the Bible, the first humans, Adam and Eve, live in the garden where God has placed two important trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam he could eat from every tree except the tree of knowledge. And the Lord God commanded him, "You may eat freely from every tree of the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for on the day that you eat of it, you will surely die." Now, doesn't it seem a little strange that God would make knowledge forbidden? That detail is going to be important in just a minute.
That's called the thing about testing one's own faith and testing pretty much the brains and the heart of a human being that pretty much needs to know exactly what to do and not to do. You can eat from any tree you want in the world, just not this one. It's pretty much the test of faith. And obviously, when one's faith pretty much is failed, it pretty much leads to a catastrophe. That's pretty much the gist of it. And because of that, that's exactly what we have in terms of death, in terms of disease, in terms of catastrophe, in terms of tragedy. That's exactly the point of using faith. When you actually fall for deceit and lie, then you pretty much set yourself up for a disastrous event. That's pretty much the gist of Adam and Eve and the serpent.
according to mainstream Christianity, Lucifer was in the Garden of Eden, and in the form of a serpent, told Eve she could become like God. The serpent said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will surely die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Now, of course, they ate, and they did not die. But could they become like God? Let's look at this deeper. The Bible views Lucifer as a being who desires to be God, and tells humanity that they can be like God. The question is, has Jesus ever done the same? In the Gospel of John, it says, "We are not stoning you for any good work," said the Jews, "but for blasphemy, because you who are a man declare yourself to be God." Jesus replied, "Is it not written in your law, 'I have said you are gods'?" That verse comes from the Gospel of John, from the Bible.
Okay, wait a minute. One sec. Let me look back over on this. Bear with me here. I'm trying to look into this real quick. Good point. "We are not stoning you for any good work," they replied, "but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God." Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, 'I have said you are gods'?" So he's pretty much questioning what they're writing.
"Said you are gods?" That verse comes from the Gospel of John, from the Bible. But did you know there is a secret book of John? What I'm about to show you is absolutely incredible. The secret book of John is a book that claims to contain secret information, and this secret information was so blasphemous that it was declared heresy and banned by the church. The secret book of John reveals that it was Jesus in the garden that caused Adam and Eve to eat from the forbidden tree of knowledge. Jesus said, "As for the tree called the knowledge of good and evil, it is the wisdom of the light. They commanded him not to eat from it. However, I caused them to eat." The connection between Christ...
Okay, so anyone could write any crap into that sort of thing and claim that it was actually this person that actually... So where was this actually... How long ago was this written, by the way? Exactly in what context and also in what historical document was written into this that could be absolutely proven to be sure into the midst of it? So that's like also saying that Moses himself didn't actually cross, the Red Sea and write the Ten Commandments, instead pretty much using this and that. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. I'm saying that that's like saying that those events never happened. So it kind of clears off to the event you're saying that because one thing is like this, the other one happens to be the other way around. But again, you have to also realize the same thing what's written in the Holy Bible. And as much as I really don't like saying it, however, though, I do still believe that there's a few things in this Bible that I do believe that is actually, changed up to make it seem a little bit more far-fetched in ways. But like, for one, how can you absolutely be sure and to prove that is exactly what was caused into this? Because again, it kind of goes off and contradicts the entire nature between two opposing forces, one force of good and the other force of evil. As composed from an angel, a fallen angel, to the Son of God. Again, like I said this pretty much about like 9 or 10 times already, which doesn't make any sense at all. And the forbidden fruit of knowledge of good and evil. So the knowledge between good and evil being that the flawed nature of people who do not learn, and the good of those who pretty much try to seek redemption or pretty much try to better themselves as human beings before the timing comes. So the result of that is death. And don't you think God himself would have known about this? Don't you think God would know, oh, it was actually my son Jesus that did it, not Lucifer? Or, oh yeah, it turns out they were the exact same being. So what would be the absolute point of God sending Jesus to Nazareth to redeem the world if it was in fact that all along? Because isn't God supposed to be all-knowing and all-powerful? Because he's pretty much the omnipotent presence of the entire world. As humanity itself pretty much cannot understand or pretty much get into the mind of God, or pretty much even look even into the eyes of God, because pretty much your mind probably would have exploded. Not only of that, your brains would probably be shattered into thousands of pieces or millions of pieces, because no one can understand the omnipotence of a deity that's pretty much out of humanity's reach. Nobody knows. Again, we're talking about handwritten documents that could have been possibly been handwritten by people. Same thing with this. Same thing as the Bible too. You know, I do place my faith in an omnipresent deity up into the sky of a loving God in my own personal view. But even sometimes, even this can actually have some weird things that I don't actually possibly agree with. But again, we are talking about something we're talking about stories into this book that were written by man. Same thing with this. It's written by man. Men can make mistakes too.
And Lucifer here is crystal clear, and you can see why this made the church so angry. But it's about to get even more intense. Here we have another clear connection between Jesus and Lucifer, as well as with light. But you might be wondering, why would Jesus cause them to eat from the tree of knowledge and go against God's command? That brings us to our next connection, because like Lucifer, Jesus wants to overthrow God.
Okay, see, now this is where it gets really, really, really off the rocks here. So you're meaning to tell me that everything from the events when Jesus himself had performed every miracle and to tell people not to sin no more. You're telling me that after all of the forgiveness the forgiveness he gave to a woman who prostituted herself, to healing a blind man who pretty much sat on his butt for pretty much a long time, and he pretty much gave him the motivation to live on for a better life. You're also telling me from the person who suffered from leprosy, from a person like that who told him to be thankful of God because he healed him. You're also saying that when I believe it was Simon who was trying to pay off a debt to the Romans for tax collections, and he pretty much helped him collect a entire bunch of fish, and he told him that it was because of the will of God that pretty much provided that for him. And you're also telling me that him crucifying himself to save humanity from its own sins. I'm not going exactly in the entire order here, but if we're also going to take a look at the fact, as opposed to letting people know about encouraging people of God not to necessarily worship in temples, and pretty much into the events of telling people, to encourage people of spreading the knowledge and gospel of God. This does not make any sense whatsoever. It's like saying some sort of hidden conspiracy from long ago, which no knowledge of events. And besides, who wrote this, by the way? Who wrote this secret gospel that was pretty much shown into that knowledge? Makes no sense. That's like saying the secret book of Hyperianism written by none other than ThrashMetalGuru. It's actually about this, and as it turns out, Hyperianism is actually formed of different forms of materialized bits of scientific knowledge, as opposed to what it really, what Morgue Official really means. I could have written that crap. I could have done that. Hell, I bet even Nietzsche himself could have actually, manipulated that system of Hyperianism if that was the case. I mean, you obviously quote him all the damn time, so that's like saying I could pretty much manipulate a system right there and let people know, oh, technically this is what actually happened in Hyperianism. Of course, a lot of people would say, well, no, because Morgue pretty much himself had started it. Well, Hyperianism isn't actually his own original word. It was actually pretty much a word that's back into the whole Greek origin? Is that, Hyperion? Yeah, it's Greek origin. Adastra, that was the state motto of Kansas too, by the way. Those weren't his words. That was Kansas words. So,
Now, Now, does that sound crazy? Well, get ready, because there's a mountain of evidence that says just that. According to the secret gospel of John, God is not the true God at all. He's a liar, a deceiver. The true God is actually a pure divine mind that exists in and emanates a realm of light called the pleroma. And all things, all beings, all creation, including us, are pieces of and part of the divine mind. The God of the...
Yet, this is the same guy who's claiming that the conscious mind is linked all the way to the edge of the effing universe without even displaying a shred of evidence, and also saying that he can basically make evidence that the human soul is based off of Euler's formula, again, which is a trigonometric function, which is based off of what? Sound waves? Okay, I'm definitely going to take it at face value for someone who can't even compile the scientific method or even pretty much present this so-called evidence to pretty much a scientific acknowledgement of pretty much the council of science. So I'm supposed to take this at face value from this. This is so-called evidence. That's not evidence. You would need a whole lot more to pretty much present it in terms of an objective standpoint here. This is pretty much nothing more than just a subjective standpoint, and as much as it really kind of pains me to say this too, because my own faith and my own belief is basically, I believe in my own personal approach and my own personal faith in God. So therefore, it's a subjective matter to me. It's subjective because I can't claim that it's true, because to me, if I want people to believe, then I'm going to encourage people. I'm not going to force people to do that. But the truth of the matter is, it's a subjective matter, not objective. Just like this isn't objective. It's more subjective than objective.
The Bible, however, is an evil being of chaos and darkness, a false pretender God. You might call him the shadow of light. This evil God created a malformed realm of matter and trapped souls of light into bodies in order to...
Are you effing Marshall Applewhite or something like that? Is this Heaven's Gate now? Am I watching a documentary on Heaven's Gate now from Marshall Applewhite? I mean, Marshall Applewhite, at least he's a little bit more interesting to watch as opposed to this John 5 ripoff here.
Enslave humanity. You see, according to the secret book of John, we are all part of the divine mind and the realm of pure light. And that means we are all divine. We are the true God, the evil God of the Bible.
If we're pretty much the true God, then how is it that we're still bound in bodies and pretty much we can't even have the ability to go beyond further? We can't even go anywhere further beyond space in physical form. We can't pretty much breathe underwater for pretty much an infinite amount of times in the physical presence that we are in. We still can't even figure out how to use 10% of or pretty much about 50% of our brains. So how in the hell would you pretty much function the actual true mind or the function of the soul based upon a subjective piece that you read out of a so-called secret gospel? I mean, hell, even this gospel doesn't even actually have any scientific process to it. At least in the Holy Bible, at least it actually has a bit of mathematics to it, like the Noah's Ark thing. And you know what? Call it what you will with the whole Noah's Ark thing being possibly based off of another story. What I'm saying is that there's at least a bit of mathematics in that, as opposed to something like here that doesn't actually have any composed sense to it. Even the mathematics doesn't even seem like it's possible on here, because again, you're correlating something that feels more fiction that it is to a historical event of things that actually have historical artifacts, historical documents, historical events, as opposed to something that we absolutely have no actual context or actual evidence that pretty much correlates into actual submissive evidence. Hell, even the Satanic Bible pretty much makes a lot more sense than this. Even the Satanic Bible actually has a little bit more of a better correlation as opposed, actually is pretty much in a little bit more to a relation to the Holy Bible than the secret book of John. And yeah, I'm actually that's how bizarre and far-fetched this entire thing is. So how you correlate such things to that matter is just beyond me. That's atrocious, and that's just completely it's a completely warped sense of an ideal here. So I don't know if this is like the William Craig textbook crap that he keeps using, but like it, I'm surprised I haven't got cluster headaches from this.
Took pieces of the divine mind, which is what we are, and trapped us in physical bodies as prisons and caused us to forget our true nature to limit our power, and so that we would worship him. And this is all described in the secret book of John. The secret book of John says, the creator God's demonic forces envied the man. His understanding was far greater than that of those who had created him, and greater than that of the chief ruler himself. When they realized that he shone with light, they took him and cast him down into the lowest depths of the material world. They intended to make him anew, this time from earth, water, fire, and wind, which are matter, darkness, desire, the artificial spirit. This all became a tomb, a new kind of body. They enchained him in forgetfulness, made him subject to dying.
Okay, you also know what's also wrong with the secret book of John, by the way? Who is exactly quoting all this? Because at least in the Bible, you actually have quotes from people pretty much in that matter that use the context of that. Who exactly is quoting this? Book of John, you could say John, oh yeah, but like again, John 3:16, which pretty much I quoted out of that. You're talking about the secret book of John. But these happen to be what? Different contexts from what? The book of Genesis? So who exactly... So you quoted quote-unquote Jesus from this. And this is one thing I've learned from church, by the way. And again, and this is also from a church that I've come from that does not like to judge people. Okay? Because at a church that I went to in Vegas before, because we've actually welcomed people of different types of forms. You know, I kind of went in, going in wearing Metallica shirts. They never even cared about it. We've actually had people at church that were pretty much, lesbian lovers. We accepted them. Cool. So, that being said, this kind of church that told me that when someone uses that kind of scripture against you in the sense of doing that, yeah, be careful, because it's just dangerous play at that point. Now again, before I continue with this, again, I don't support religious zealots. I don't support extremist Christianity. I don't support Christianity that pretty much does nothing but belittle people, try to guilt trip people into not getting abortions. Because again, I'm pro-choice. I believe the woman has a right to do what she wants to do with her body. I don't believe in Christianity that judges people for being either gay, lesbian, or bisexual. It's no one's right to judge that way. And I think it's a really crappy aspect of people to do so. But as opposed to this, however, though, I am one of those who think that there are certain people out there in the world that will try to convince you of something differently, and that's one of the things you have to watch out for. I'd say at the same time, respect other people's beliefs, but don't let other people try to defer your beliefs based upon so-called evidence or whatnot, because you never know. Faith itself, at times, can sometimes be a whole lot stronger than the so-called evidence and truth. Now again, faith, a subjective thing, specifically to us, as it is. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even have to be Christianity. It can even be Satanism. It can even be Taoism, Buddhism, hedonism, pantheism. Those things to you, that's what matters. That's where your own faith into what area of that particular system of belief and faith, that's where it matters to you. Not because when someone else tries to tell you, oh, well, turns out there's actually a gospel, a secret gospel that contradicts everything that you believe in, and therefore you're wrong. See, you got to watch out for people like that. That's what I have an issue with, okay? And it doesn't just go for Christianity. It goes for other people who believe differently as well. If you believe so much in it, believe it, but learn to respect people, love people, and you know what? Just sometimes, if someone disagrees with you, doesn't mean you got to be enemies about it. Hell, watch Conan the Barbarian. There's a particular scene where Conan and his friend are pretty much talking about two different gods that they believe in. Oh, my God is the God of the sky. My God is the God of pretty much of the earth. My God pretty much, I think, is bigger or stronger than God. I was like, okay. Those two got along without fighting. That's a miracle. Huh? As opposed to this is crap I hate.
And the secret book of John is far from the only book to reveal that the God of the Bible is an evil being. There are many other secret books that the church banned that say exactly that. In the Apocalypse of Adam, Adam tells his son Seth that he and Eve were originally one divine being, that the evil God fractured and trapped in matter. Adam said, "And we resembled the great eternal angels, for we were higher than the God who had created us. Then God, the ruler of the eons and the powers, divided us in wrath, and we served him in fear and slavery." The evil God caused Adam and Eve to forget their divine origin, and he knew that if they ate from the tree of knowledge, they would begin to remember what they truly are. This is why he made it forbidden and said they would die if they ate from it. But in the Bible, the serpent, or Lucifer, tells them they won't die, but they will become like God. Now, in the secret book of John, Jesus says that he is the one that causes them to eat, so that they will wake up from sleep's death and be filled with the wisdom of the divine light. According to many of these books banned by the church, Jesus Christ isn't the son of the evil creator God. He's the son of the true God, meaning that he's one of the emanations or forms of the true God, as we all are, but we forgot our divine nature. He's a messenger from the true God, the divine mind, the realm of pure light. You might even call him the son of light. And his mission is to help humanity come to self-knowledge that they are divine and escape the evil creator God. Jesus is a Lightbringer sent to get humanity to realize that they are the true God and to end the rule of the evil creator God. Now, does that sound familiar? This is extremely close to the Bible's description of Lucifer, the morning star and light.
Based off of a different type of gospel that just happens to be written in reverse from the actual gospel written, that's based off of actual historical events. And again, I'm talking about historical events that actually have been linked to the city of Israel, Golgotha, Egypt, Nazareth, and mountains of Midia, and the Red Sea, Mount Sinai, Jerusalem, Canaan. I think Canaan was actually a part of that too. Should I go on? I mean, cities like Sodom, Gomorrah. I mean, I can't really say that for a fact because I haven't really done too much research over Sodom and Gomorrah. Written some songs about that kind of thing, by the way, too, because I like writing metal songs about, certain crap. But you're telling me after all that, as opposed to historical basings, which pretty much the Bible itself is based from those basings, the secret book is just an inverse of that, which holds no comparison. Because all it is, it's just the flip side of it. So, again, I'm supposed to just believe this at face value because it was written down on some book. So, the fear of death that I had when I had thanatophobia, and this goes to my followers, by the way, and I'm not saying that, you should definitely do this, but like my point of view when I was dealing with thanatophobia, that's when I, became a little bit, that's how it started for me, when I became a little bit more closer to God, because I was afraid of death. And so I don't really fear death as much, because I feel like I've grown more closer to God. And from my own personal experience, and I know it's a little bit hard for me, and it's been hard for me still since, closer even to this day, but I do believe in my own personal point of view, because of God, that certain things in my life have actually changed. And I thought things like, my father, for example, because he never really went to church with us as often, actually not as much, but like he's been doing that more. I've been praying for him more. It worked for me, but that's my point of view. If you believe differently, you believe differently, that's fine, but I'm only telling you a personal perspective on the matter from that. And I really do believe that, in the personal sense and subjective wise, in my personal point of view, that God does work in wondrous ways. But again, that's personal. I'm not trying to claim that off as a fact to you to have you guys do anything. If you want to believe differently, you believe differently, and that's all that matters to you. Okay? So, I kind of wasted enough time doing that.
Lightbringer, the son of the dawn, or son of light, that desired to overthrow the God of the Bible and bring humanity the message that they could be like God if they ate from knowledge.
Okay, but here's also the biggest problem with that entire thing, that if everyone could be a god, this would also spark one of the greatest disasters, or pretty much this would actually spawn the greatest catastrophe in the entire world, even as opposed to nuclear war, or as opposed to Armageddon of angels versus demons, God versus the devil. That if anyone could be a god, it would be like that. So here's another thing that kind of screws with that entire message, that if anyone can be a god, then it could be humans themselves, or humanity itself. So if we unlock that potential, only problem is that in pretty much in the sense of humanity, we are still ignorant human beings capable of murder, deceit, rape, all of this other crap. In senses like mythology, for example, Zeus himself was a god who ended up raping a woman named Callisto, and then she ended up giving birth to pretty much her son, the son of Zeus, and her son pretty much, technically that would consider him pretty much being a half-god, nearly kills his mother because of what Zeus did to Callisto. Now, that's only one example of something, because again, we're talking about mythology from Greek, by the way, and we're talking about Zeus, the king of gods, in that sense of mythology. And so Callisto nearly being killed by her son because of what Zeus did to her by transforming into a bear. It's one example of knowledge from someone, even from a half-god, by the way. We're also talking about this, and let's go to Norse mythology, by the way. Ragnarok. Okay, so you have pretty much gods, or you had Loki, for example, versus what was his name? Give me a sec. Heimdall pretty much being the royal gatekeeper of Asgard. You also pretty much had, again, Ragnarok, for example, those particular gods versus other types of beings as well, just going to war. Now imagine if humanity itself, everyone was pretty much the continuous area of God, or pretty much the capable version of God, and we all went to war with each other, just in that capability. The entire Earth itself would not be able to sustain the entire impact that everyone has in that sense of being a god, because it would be imminent destruction for every single living thing on Earth. Because if we all actually had the power to be God, we would actually have a destructive force that could pretty much not only destroy Earth, but possibly destroy the planets that would pretty much be close together, and possibly even destroy the sun itself. So there is no way we could possibly be God in that sense, because it would pretty much destroy the entire point of living peacefully. Now, even if we do live in a shitty-ass world, at least we live in a shitty-ass world where things are a little bit more organized, or a little bit more safe, or a little bit more controlled. I wouldn't say absolutely safe, but at least a little bit more controlled, despite the fact that we have war that still goes on, despite the fact that we still have terrorism that goes on. So imagine if you had those people that actually unlocked the potential to become God, and everyone else had the potential to become God. Again, it would just lead to an all-out war, a force between good and evil that would pretty much cause the imminent destruction of Earth. And even if we did survive then that entire war, and Earth itself would shatter, we would probably be stuck in the cosmos trying to figure out what the hell we did wrong. Again, we're just ignorant human beings, pretty much carbon-based life forms that just doesn't know any better. So again, this whole entire Gospel of John of us trying to be this particular God in the sense does not make any sense whatsoever, because it also kills the entire point of the afterlife itself, because everyone becomes God, then everyone else is going to try to run for that position of God in the sense of afterlife, or the sense of heaven, or whatever realm that would be in that sense. It would be an eternal war. So no, that is not the answer. That's one of the biggest flaws from this entire gospel.
Could it be that Lucifer is actually the good guy here, and the church just wants to portray anything and anyone that says you are God as evil?
Okay, and also saying that this is wrong is also telling people who worship Satan or Lucifer that they are wrong too. So this is kind of slapping them in the face. And I'm actually defending them on this. I'm defending, as a Christian, by the way, I am a Christian, by the way, saying this on record, defending the church of Lucifer and Satanism for people who believe in that, because that's like saying if Lucifer's the good guy and pretty much contradicting the entire thing, that's also kind of spitting in their face, because this is kind of showing that you're only inversing the entire area of this and saying that it's supposed to be on this side and this side, because that's like saying that, oh, well, it turns out the Satanists or Lucifarianists are actually on the wrong side of the spectrum. You guys are actually supposed to be over here. So it's like kicking both sides in the nuts here, saying that we both got it wrong. No, we didn't get it wrong. We have two opposing sides and force to it, but this is what we have and this is what they have. So to say that it's like saying we both got it wrong and you got it right, which is a complete dangerous method, because this is cult-like behavior. This is the reason why StevieWolfe and Count Jackula couldn't really take this guy seriously. Even the Amazing Atheist couldn't even take this seriously. Hence why I can't stress this point enough.
So they can maintain their power. In another banned gospel, the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus reveals we come from the realm of living light and are the true sons of God. Jesus said, if they ask you, where are you from? Reply to them, we have come from the place where light is produced from itself. It came and revealed itself in their image. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. Now, even if you want to discount the books banned by the church and go strictly by what's in the Bible, you have to explain why there is such a huge difference between the Old Testament God and Jesus Christ of the New Testament.
Because again, humanity itself was doomed when pretty much we were so ignorant because we couldn't even get out of our own effed up ways here. That's kind of the whole point of this. When Adam and Eve pretty much screwed up the whole entire area of life for everyone else, that's when we were all damned. We were all doomed because we didn't know exactly what to do. We didn't actually have the tools and the knowledge to fix ourselves. We had slavery. I mean, there's a contradiction in that too, by the way. And that's one point that really makes me uneasy. But, you know, there's a story and there's a point behind that too. But what I'm saying is that there has been oppression, there has been pretty much death, there has been cruelty. But that's the point of Jesus coming back in the form of pretty much being a human. To show that if he himself could forgive people for what they did, then pretty much humanity itself can get its act together and pretty much do what they're supposed to do to forgive. It's not about saying, okay, well, this is about also becoming God. No, it's about being able to better yourselves into a better life, so that way you don't pay the wage of sin. Even when you die, you're pretty much given the reward of going to heaven and pretty much living there the rest of your life in paradise. Because the wage of sin is death. That's pretty much the whole premise of the entire thing. And in order to beat the premise of death, you give your life to that. You give your life to God, and pretty much to be above that, or to not pretty much be dismayed into the sin of the wage of sin, pretty much in disparaging of death. That was the point. That was the whole entire premise of this. And so to say that an entire gospel, this entire secret gospel is pretty much in inverse to all of this doesn't make any sense, because now it just tells people, like, no matter what you do, you're effed from the beginning. That because it turns out the actual savior is actually supposed to be who Lucifer is from the very beginning. It doesn't quite add up. Because again, we're also talking about an angel as opposed to the actual son and embodiment of God. For he who would not perish but not have he would not perish, but he would have eternal life. Is what I was trying to say. And again, you're also talking about how one who was cast out of heaven, as opposed to the other one who pretty much got himself nailed to a cross and endured the pain that any human would go through, and would cry unto God to forgive humanity. So it goes to show that more of a selfless act as opposed to a selfish act. So saying that someone like Jesus was actually the person who manipulated Adam and Eve and then all of a sudden give his life to pretty much pay this, it doesn't make sense, because it doesn't show, and again, it would just show that even God himself would actually know, because an omnipotent God would have all the knowledge. So again, it doesn't make sense to use an inverse set of knowledge that contradicts the all. Pretty much, if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-seeing, then pretty much we would not have needed this. So again, it flaws up a point here.
The God of the Bible is a jealous, vindictive war machine, even in terms of what's described in the Bible. He drowns the entire world in the flood described in the book of Genesis.
Yeah, that's because humanity itself pretty much prays to something else, and I'm only talking about in the history, by the way, because when God pretty much, let me kind of go back into the whole chapter of Exodus here, because when God had used Moses pretty much to free his people, to let them know, because you had seen, Moses even angrily said to his people that you saw 10 miracles from God and yet you show no faith. And then even after all that, they pretty much prayed onto a golden calf that had no correlation or anything to do with God whatsoever. And that's what pretty much made God very angry. So even after all Moses did, by God working through him, that is pretty much the reason why. Because even after when God does something for humanity, humanity is still going to just piss all over it. They're still going to be like, it's like saying, God, you suck. Even after God pretty much bestows the blessings upon people. And they still pretty much shun him for, even after everything he does for people. And maybe that's pretty much the reason why when people say, well, why isn't God answering my prayers? Well, number one, you already did everything. And I'm only saying this because this is just how I'm perceiving it. It's like God saying, hey, look, I already did everything, for you, and you still want me to do more, and yet you still curse my name. And one thing I've also learned here is that God doesn't work on your time. He works on his time. It is not specifically set for you or me when that miracle is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be on the Lord's time. That's the point. So that's what I'm trying to go across.
Accepts Jephthah's daughter as a burnt virgin sacrifice, and he has all the male firstborn children and animals of Egypt killed to intimidate the Pharaoh. He is obsessed with theft and violence. And remember, all that comes from the Bible itself, not...
Well, yeah, did you recall the fact that the Pharaoh himself pretty much had killed and pretty much almost committed genocide to the Hebrews by killing the firstborn of the Hebrews by feeding them to alligators, or pretty much killing them with the blades? Did we forget that part? The fact that the Hebrews themselves are the chosen people of God, and when the Pharaoh decided to kill the firstborn of Egypt, and pretty much the slaves had cried out to their God, and God finally had answered the prayer by sending Moses onto them pretty much to tell Pharaoh, and giving the Pharaoh plenty of chances to let his people go, and he still didn't do it. Well, sorry, but he had many chances, he didn't do it, and that was the result of it. Yeah, sad to say, but when you piss off God and you pretty much enslave his people and you try to almost commit genocide to an entire race that worship that God, yeah, expect God to be pissed. Hence the 10 plagues of Egypt.
Not the bad books, but Jesus is the complete opposite. Jesus preaches a message of love and forgiveness. In fact, he directly contradicts what God said in the Old Testament. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also." The difference between the God of the Old Testament and Jesus Christ is so drastic, the exact opposite of each other, that many early Christians and groups came to the conclusion that the God of the Old Testament was not the true God. Many of them concluded that he was outright evil, like the Marcion, Sethian, and Cainite Christians. And others, like the Valentinians, they believed that he was a lesser God. There are so many early Christian groups that came to this conclusion that I don't have the time to list them all here. It wasn't until the church established orthodoxy in Rome and many books were banned, destroyed, and so-called heretics arrested that this view was all but destroyed, stamped out, eliminated. In fact, in another heretical gospel, the Gospel of Judas, Jesus outright says that the 12 disciples worship an evil God, that they have no idea who Jesus is, and will lead all their followers astray. The disciples said to him, "Master, why are you laughing at our prayer?" He answered and said to them, "I'm not laughing at you. You're not doing this because you want to, but because through this your God will be praised." They said, "Master, you are the Son of our God." Jesus said to them, "How do you know me? Truly I say to you, no generation of the people among you will know me." The disciples tell Jesus about a vision that they've had, where they see people sacrificing animals and children and committing murder. Jesus...
Okay, what the hell is this? The Bohemian Grove, where the secret government is pretty much taking children and setting them in a fire in some grove area over a tall fucking owl statue? And yes, I used the F word, by the way. What is that? Where do we actually have the conclusive evidence for that? I know, and that's a little vague, and I know that's a little bit bland of me to ask, but where?
And tells them that their vision represents the evil things that they will do, the false god that they serve, and the people that they'll lead astray. Jesus said to them, "You're the ones receiving the offerings on the altar you've seen. That's the God you serve. And you're the 12 people you've seen. And the animals you saw brought in to be sacrificed are the crowd you lead astray." According to the Gospel of Judas, Jesus is making it clear that the disciples have no idea who he truly is, and that they'll lead the world astray. In other words, what will eventually become mainstream Christianity is wrong, because what will become mainstream Christianity relies heavily on the testimony of the disciples. And they were absolutely wrong about who God is and who Jesus really is, going so far as to get it completely backwards. So who or what is the true God and who is Jesus? Jesus takes Judas aside and reveals secret knowledge. Jesus said, "Come, and I'll teach you about the mysteries that no human will see, because there exists a great and boundless realm whose horizons no angelic generation has seen, in which is a great invisible spirit, which no..."
I think I'm just gonna stop right here because holy crap, if I had to go through this, I'm pretty much gonna probably get like a malignant tumor or whatnot, because we're literally an hour and 13 minutes in, and I seriously don't want to be like 2 hours into this entire thing, but like holy crap. Look, let me just sum this up, because I've said this dozens of times, but you believe what you want to believe, that's fine. But like, if you're gonna sit here and try to convince people who believe, it doesn't even matter, even non-religious people of this, then this is just idiotic. Seriously, it contradicts, and not only to that, it also conflates absolutely no. It doesn't contribute or conflates any knowledge whatsoever that could actually pertain to helping humanity at all. It totally goes against the entire idea of who Jesus is supposed to be. Jesus is supposed to be the savior as opposed to Lucifer, who was pretty much the one who led the rebellion. Again, you're making a comparison to a fallen angel as opposed to the actual Son of God, who pretty much teaches people how to love and respect others and to forgive others and to follow the word and wisdom of God. Oh, and did we also forget about the whole part when he died in the tomb, and then two angels were pretty much sitting at the tomb to let him know, hey, as it turns out, he's risen. He beat death. Did we forget that part? He beat death. Why? Because he still had faith in God. He had faith in the Father. And that was the point. Jesus saved the context of what I'm getting is that Jesus saved humanity through dying on the cross, as opposed to someone who would try to take on the throne. Pride versus humility. Jesus went through humility for someone who was humble, who went through humility for humanity, as opposed to one who took on the throne and tried to trick humanity into pretty much thinking that they could actually be exactly like God. And even if we actually became like God, I think it would actually be to a point where we could not be self-sustained in that area, and we would not live long enough to see a day. Think of it this way, before I end it up, and this is gonna sound like a very crappy comparison, but so think of movies like Superman, Aquaman, hell, even what was the other one? I don't know the exact name, but like I know there's a cartoon of it, an animated version. Like there's Omni-Man. I think it's called Invincible or not. That's what it's called. J.K. Simmons, he's a cool voice actor too. But if you could think of any other superheroes, like say Thor, hell, even Captain Marvel, you could say that. Hell, Peter Quill, like the Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. These potential characters actually have godlike abilities. Seems pretty cool. Seems pretty unique, and yeah, maybe us in reality wish we could be like these, and pretty much, we put ourselves in stories, we put ourselves as, made-up characters to feel a little bit closer, or we actually have the relationships of watching those characters from the movie. But I bet you in real life, if we actually had that potential or that actual step of becoming that particular deity, I'm pretty sure it would not go well. While something looks cool, like you could jump a few buildings, I'm pretty sure it's not the way that reality would work. 'Cause I'm pretty sure it would kill you. And again, from what I'm teaching is that for me personally, it's a subjective matter. And that's the mystique of life. I can't tell you for an absolute fact what is real and not real, what exists and not exists, because again, for me, I personally believe in God. I'm not here to convince you. It's not YouTube wise, it's not my place to do that. Okay? Because YouTube, for me, it's just about me critiquing and saying things. And if people want to critique me or critique my beliefs, that's fine. I'm still going to stick with what I believe, but I'm not here to convince people in terms of what they believe here, as opposed to Hyperianism. As opposed to that, I'm not here to judge you upon what you believe or disbelieve. So, that being said, I'm going to just finish up here because it's an hour. It's an hour and 18 minutes, and I'm going to get some sleep. So, you guys have a good day. If you guys want to or if people out there want to bash me, go right ahead. It's not going to affect me. Do what you want. Insult me, criticize me. Don't send me death threats, but if you want to criticize how I look, how I sound, if you want to make fun of me, fine. I'm not really going to care. You do you. So, that being said, I am JeffHoliday, the ThrashMetalGuru. You guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and you know what? Let's just see how this goes.